Hey guys, Jared here, and I've got to say I've actually been pretty excited to give you my review and opinion of the new Samsung Galaxy Note 4. But that said, I don't want to dwell too much on the new metal band that we're already more than aware of, but I did want to say that it does make the phone feel way better in the hand than any previous Galaxy Note phone before it. And it also makes it look 100% more attractive to look at too. It also gives you a much more confident grip on it so that you're less likely to have it slip out of your hands when trying to stretch your thumb across the display. And since we're actually on the topic of cosmetic changes, gone is the fake plastic stitching that we all saw on the Note 3, but also the USB 3.0 port, which I'm totally okay with, but instead replaced by a USB 2.0 port that brings quick charging version 2.0 with it. Now, I did test this twice, once with the device off and once with the device on. And with the device on at 13%, I plugged it in at 10:30 at night, and by 11:55 p.m. it was at 100%. And yes, I did watch the full charge times like a hawk. So anyways, that gives us a charge time of 1 hour and 25 minutes for a 3220 milliamp hour battery. And with the phone turned off at 15%, I plugged it in at 4:56 p.m. and by 6:17 it was fully charged, which gives us a charge time of 1 hour and 21 minutes. So basically that tells us that there really isn't any difference in charging times whether the phone's on or off, which is actually good news because I hate turning my phone off to charge it as fast as possible for the fear that I'll miss an important call or text that I need to address right away. But I think you'll find that you'll be charging this phone much less than we're used to compared to previous Galaxy Notes, because aside from the obviously large battery capacity itself, in real world day-to-day usage, I easily managed to get 2 days of usage. And I mean, to be fair, yeah, my screen on time isn't very high, but for average usage, along with the amazing standby time, it's really good. I'm impressed. That said, with my heavy usage testing, I only managed to get a mere 3 hours and 41 minutes of screen on time, so really not so great when it comes to constant usage. And that's what my heavy usage testing is though, starting from 100% and not putting it down until it reaches 15%. But again, that's heavy usage to give us a worst case scenario. Average to light usage could easily yield 5 to maybe even 6 hours of screen on time. Now, because the Note 4 is Samsung's newest flagship, it comes with the latest version of Android. Actually, I guess it's not the latest version anymore, but it was at the time of release. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that it comes with Android 4.4.4 KitKat, which actually smooths out Samsung's TouchWiz quite a bit. Now, when I say it smooths it out, I don't mean that TouchWiz on the Note 4 is super janky or anything, but you will notice the slight delay or frame drop every now and then, and even then, it's so rare, it's barely worth even mentioning. But basically, if you're at all familiar with the Galaxy Note 3 or Galaxy S4 and S5 for that matter, really it's pretty much the exact same user experience in that other than the S Pen software, which I'll get to in a minute, we still have the multi-window feature, ultra power saving mode, which I love by the way, and a bunch of Samsung apps, including the S Health app that works with the heart rate monitor on the back, which, by the way, I never ever use. But even though I said that it's pretty much the same user experience as those other Samsung devices I mentioned earlier, I am blown away happy that they got rid of those Harry Potter features that I've been complaining about for years, that being all those stupid air gesture features, and it appears that they've even ditched that stupid floating toolbox option that we saw in the Galaxy S5. Now, if all those features do exist somewhere hidden away, I do apologize, but I can't find them anywhere, and that makes me very happy. I mean, it does still have motion and gesture settings, but actually most phones these days have the same features there, and I actually find a few of them useful. And before I move on to the S Pen, I did want to point out a really neat and new feature to the Note software that kind of plays towards the whole multi-window / multitasking thing. So you can grab the edge of certain apps and drag them to resize it into a window, and even collapse it into a little chat head-like bubble that you can move around and place anywhere you like. Which is really cool, but just like the multi-window feature, it only supports certain apps, and unfortunately there's no real definitive list of compatible apps, which could get frustrating. For instance, I can resize the Google Play Store and YouTube into a window, but not Google Plus or Instagram. But it's still neat either way, and I've actually used it and found it handy a few times now. So the S Pen, if you can train yourself to remember to use it, is actually an awesome tool, and is really more of an extension to the phone and makes the experience kind of feel closer to using an actual computer. So you pull the pen out, right? right? And Air Command pops up, which gives you 4 options. Now, the furthermost left being Action Memo. So for example, you can write yourself a note to search for something later, and then tap the link icon and then select the browser, and it'll search the internet for you. Smart Select lets you select portions of the screen in a tidy and resizable box for editing or sharing later. An image clip is actually pretty much the same idea as Smart Select, but it lets you draw your own selection, which is perfect for selecting oddly shaped objects, but has some quick reshaping options for you if needed. And finally, there's Screen Write, which takes a screenshot of whatever's on your screen and allows you to draw or write directly onto the image. So pretty straightforward stuff, and super useful in actual practice. Now, as you go along, you'll probably notice the S Pen has other neat little things it can do, but you can see everything it can do in the S Pen settings options. Now, one major aspect of the Note 4 that draws me to it is the undeniably, amazingly beautiful 5.7-inch QHD Super AMOLED display. It's just gorgeous. Image quality and color accuracy wise, using Display Tester, you can see that there is some very minor color banding. But of course, black and white saturation is great. Black contrast is bang on, whereas white contrast, though, does suffer in the reds, yellows, greens, and blues, but more or less makes up for it with overall color saturation. And the gamma seems to be pretty damn accurate for an AMOLED display. And all that adds up to pictures and even videos looking awesome. But I did want to mention that while watching videos from time to time, I did notice some pretty hardcore clipping, but it seems it's only in really dark scenes. But other than that, the image quality is great, and depending on what you're looking at, extremely sharp and crisp thanks to that huge 1440 by 2560 resolution. But as others before me have mentioned, often you'll notice pixelization with the edges on some images because either the app or image wasn't optimized to be viewed on the new generation of QHD displays. And it's a damn good thing that the Note 4 has such a high-res display because you'll want a nice display after taking pictures with that awesome rear 16 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization. That's right! Optical image stabilization. I've been waiting for Samsung to include OIS for so long, and it's finally arrived, and I'm here to tell you it works really well. Generally, I've never really been one to take a lot of pictures with my phones because I sort of have shaky hands, and 9 times out of 10, whenever I took a picture, it would come out blurry, so I'd have to take multiples until I got one right. Well, now, with OIS, it's the other way around, where 9 times out of 10, the image is in focus and tack sharp. And the images look just awesome. The colors look pretty accurate, though sometimes it seems it doesn't know how to handle exposure properly, and depending on the scene or object, it tries to over-sharpen images, like pictures with the ocean, for example. If you look at the wood fence posts, it tried to over-sharpen so much that it created artifacts. It's not really that huge a deal, considering it's a smartphone camera, for God's sakes, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And sure enough, if you do find yourself in a situation where you're getting exposure problems, like I mentioned before, HDR does a pretty good job of getting that light where you need it most, and not to mention, you still have those manual control settings with ISO and exposure, so you're pretty well covered there. But where I noticed the OIS really show its strength and benefits was with recording video, specifically in 4K, where if any of you've noticed, it's sort of a weakness for a lot of phones when recording 4K because panning scenery, for example, would be really jerky, and the slightest movement of the hand would just distort the crap out of the video image. But with OIS and the Note 4, that problem is pretty much non-existent. Take a look at this clip I recorded with just my hands, no tripod at all, and tell me that's not impressive. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the performance has been really good, especially considering it's running TouchWiz, albeit a slightly more refined version, but we can probably attribute a big portion of that performance to Qualcomm's brand new Snapdragon 805, those 3GB of RAM, and that Adreno 420 GPU. Surprisingly though, benchmark scores were a little lower than I expected, and that's not a bad thing at all. Like I've mentioned so many times in the past, I've seen devices get much lower benchmark scores than other devices, but run a 100% smoother and faster than those that scored higher. Now, Geekbench gave it a single core score of 1096 and a multi-core score of 3235. And with Antutu, we got 45,871, which is pretty damn good. And to me, those scores seem pretty on par with how the performance on the Note 4 actually feels. Anyways, with all that said, I've always liked the Galaxy Note line of phones, but I've never had the urge to make one of them my daily driver because they've always seemed a little too overwhelming to me with all the crazy features and the unintuitive implementation of them. However, this time around, the Note 4 feels quite simplistic to use. The software in both TouchWiz and the S Pen feels much more cleaned up and way more intuitive to me than ever before, and the performance is finally where I've always wanted Samsung phones to be. At 16 megapixels, the camera is a beast at producing high-res, sharp, colorful pictures, and with OIS, although lighting has always been an issue for phone cameras, it should help quite a bit, not to mention pictures being taken in optimal lighting conditions. And real-world use proves that the battery life is pretty damn good, but does suffer from hard, non-stop usage. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're bored and have nothing but your phone to keep you occupied, you might want to bring a backup battery or a power bank with you. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4's size may not be for everyone, but with all that it currently offers, it's totally won me over, and I'd love to call this phone my daily driver. Anyways, folks, that's it for this one, but I'd love to know your thoughts on the Note 4 and whether you'd consider getting one for yourself over other current offerings right now. And if you like this video, maybe click the like button, and if you're new to my channel and want to see more from me, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well. But thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.